The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, and thank you for joining TechExcel today. My name is Renee Alanis, Senior Marketing Manager here at TechExcel. TechExcel is proud to host our 2012 webcast series. We hold informative webinars on various topics each month throughout the year. Please visit our website at techexcel.com for the current list of webinars. Regarding today's webcast, I do encourage all of you to use the question function located at the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Just type in your question and we will answer them at the end of today's discussion. I'd like to introduce today's speaker, Rick Jonsson, Senior Operations Manager here at TechExcel. Hi, Rick.
Hi, Renee. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I suppose we might as well kick off and get somewhere with this, so I don't keep you all day. We're going to talk a little bit about Lean IT today, and we are going to start with a little info on what Lean is and the objectives of it. And then we're going to have a look at typical areas of waste in IT. And finally, we'll have a look at how you can go about implementing a Lean IT culture. So, what is Lean thinking? There is 5 overriding principles to Lean. One is identifying customers and specific values, which is kind of the starting point to recognize where the total time and effort in any organization adds value for the end customer. By clearly defining value for a specific product, service, or so on, from the end customer perspective, then you can clearly see which is the waste and which should then be targeted for removal. So the second step is to identify and map the value stream, and the value stream is an entire set of activities across your organization involved in jointly delivering a product or a service. This kind of represents the end-to-end process that delivers the value to the customer. Once you understand what your customer wants, then the next step is to identify how you're delivering, or not, as the case may be, that to them. Step 3 is creating a flow by eliminating waste. And what you'll find is when you first do your value stream mapping, you might find that only 5% of what you do adds value to the process. This can rise up to 45% in a service environment. And eliminating this waste gives a product or service flow to the customer without interruptions, detours, or waiting. The 4th element is responding to customer pull, and what that means is it's about understanding the customer demands on your service and then creating your process to respond to that. And then the last bit is sort of pursue perfection by creating pull and flows that recognize the individual steps, and you will get significant gains out of this. So, Lean IT. Although, if you look at the marketplace, Lean principles are generally well established and have are applied broadly in many areas, especially from manufacturing. And Lean IT is kind of just emerging, and it will pose a significant challenge for practitioners as there is very, very little material on it today. Whereas Lean IT initiatives can be limited in scope and deliver results quickly, implementing Lean IT is a continuous and a long-term process that may take years before Lean principles become intrinsic to an organization's culture. As Lean manufacturing has become widely implemented, the extension of Lean principles spreading into IT and other service industries, analysts has identified many similarities between IT and manufacturing. For example, whereas when manufacturing functions manufacture goods of value to customers, the IT function manufactures business services of value to the parent organization and to its customers. So there is quite a few similarities in between these things. And you will find that there is lots of big companies that's taken the step into the lean culture and then lean IT, such as Tesco, Fujitsu, TransUnion, and so on, that are driving this all the way through their organizations. A few things to note about lean IT. Most IT departments either have begun or are partway through adopting some sort of standard process or procedure models for their operational activities. ITIL probably being the most prominent one. However, lean IT is more than just adopting a standard or repeatable processes. It's about embedding those processes into your culture and people of your organization. It's almost like the roots of a tree. It's difficult to see the culture and therefore difficult for competitors to copy, yet provides the foundation of stability for future growth. The purpose of lean IT is not just operational efficiency, but it's using the operational efficiency to create strategy that provides a clear and sustainable competitive advantage between an enterprise and its competition. I think the biggest lesson for any IT department is that lean IT is not about the tools that are used, it's about the processes and the procedures deployed. Every journey has to start somewhere, and for lean IT, the journey begins with understanding what assets an organization has and how they are used. For most organizations, usage can be measured on a cost and value basis, but they should also measure anything that's meaningful to the enterprise, and that's where lean IT comes in. The objective of lean IT is to eliminate waste and make IT as efficient as possible. But efficiency is clearly only one dimension that an organization must consider. There is things like risk, which can influence decisions on certain activities, and there is also sustainability, which should allow the CEOs and CTOs to ensure IT services will be delivered to match the organization's future needs. As I said, lean IT is not about the tools. Yeah, there are many tools out there and techniques associated with lean, but lean is definitely not in the tools. Tools are there to help, but they're only good use when they're used in the correct time in the appropriate way. You also see that agile software development methodologies such as Scrum, XP, and so on, and lean IT are very similar. And that's no coincidence. That's because agile methods often have their roots in lean management. But there are some real important differences. If you look at the popular agile development approaches that are highly tailored to self-organizing teams, that can work great if the team members are suitable for self-organizations. Lean is not based on self-organized teams, and that means that lean also works on classic leadership structures. Agile methods are usually limited to insulated working teams or co-located teams. Lean IT is more of an enterprise approach. It's a great advantage, but there is also the risk that comes with that, which is that lean IT fails for the entire company because it's spread all over. Lean can also be used outside actual software development, as you probably know, and software maintenance. It's especially true for infrastructure units and so on. We're now going to have a little bit about the waste that you can see in your IT departments. The waste in IT environments are different from, say, a physical manufacturing plant, that the wastes are not always that visible, and thus making the management difficult. Server sprawl, slow applications, short response times, underutilized hardware, manual processes, and so on are some signs of wastage in IT. We're now going to run through the 8 areas of waste that you will find in lean and IT. And we're going to start with defects. And this waste is quite self-explanatory, to be honest. Whether it's in manufacturing or service environments, a defect will definitely be a waste because it's something that doesn't meet the customer requirements. If your customer orders 1,000 red leather cases and you deliver them in maroon, it will be a defect. The customer could reject all of your goods, costing you time and material that was put into it. Perhaps they may accept it with a discount if you're lucky, and so on. On the service side, if the customer actually deposited $1,000 into your bank account, but due to some errors only actually deposited 100, that would be a defect, and that would lead to complaints from customers and extra processing costing time and money and so on. To give you a little bit of a flavor, what the defects in this area would be things like poor project execution, not understanding the customer requirements and expectations and thus delivering ineffective solutions, unstable software, hardware devices, lost information, application bugs, and so on. The list could be endless. Over-provisioning. Making something that nobody is going to buy is definitely a waste. Old school production thinking that factories and so on should always be running at full capacity and utilization doesn't work anymore. Today's production thinking is more different, and smart companies produce according to customer demands. In times where demands doesn't give 100% utilization, you need to focus on other productive tasks such as training and so on. A little flavor for this is on this area, what you could be looking for is over-complex processing, producing and distributing reports that nobody uses, unused functionality in software. There are things like not canceling projects that doesn't add value anymore, workflow routings that are not necessary, and so on and so forth. Delays. If you're waiting, nothing is being done. Quite simple, isn't it? This waste is so simple, but often overlooked most of the time. If a product is sitting there on a line waiting to be worked on by a machine, there is no value at all being added. There is only value if it's being worked on by the machine. If a bunch of invoices is sitting in a tray waiting to be signed, that's also waste. If you're part of a multi-step process and you can't do your work because you're waiting for previous steps to finish, that leads to waste of waiting. Waiting is usually one of the easiest of the 8 wastes to identify and remove. Many times it also yields the biggest benefits. Lead time and efficiency can be greatly boosted through the removal of this waste. Workflow balancing and pull production can help to reduce it. Some flavors of this are when you have to search for information, delays from excessive review and approval steps, slow application responses, delays between, for instance, coding and testing, metrics that isn't real time, you have to wait to take action, reports that take long to run. It's again an endless list. Non-value-added processing. All businesses today are made up of multiple processes. Perception is usually that all of those processes are required. But in reality, many processes are just currently required because there are certain root causes or problems that requires those steps. For example, many companies we've done inspections on, you see 100% non-value-added processing. It's basically legacy processes that are still there. There are other examples of non-value-added processes such as cutting metal of items and then going through a deburring or finishing process to get rid of the rough edges on the cut when you could have done it in the first place. Office and service processes are usually filled with non-value-added processes. The problem is that they are much harder to see and identify in an office environment than on a production line. Still, there is some good, if you do some good transactional mapping, you can highlight these processes. A good example of waste in the office is the requirement of having many signatures on a request, for instance. The time it takes to sign a piece of paper may just be a few seconds, but by the time 6, 7 people have signed it, it could have gone days. So it's looking for the root cause and try to eliminate it. Value stream mapping and root cause analysis would really reduce this kind of waste. And in an office environment, some examples of this would be processing of sales invoices, ordering of training materials, storing of material, having meetings to discuss products and services, and so on. Transportation issues. So this one is one of the 8 wastes where many people start to sort of scratch their heads. After all, if I don't transport my material to the customer, how will they receive it? How can it not add value to the customer to have the items transported to them? This kind of brings us back to the point made at the start that just because it's categorized as a waste doesn't mean it's pure trash and should be thrown out. While the product is being transported and not worked on, no value is being added. So you need to look at the entire processes. Some companies have success removing transportation by producing products inside their customers' plants, which is a very creative way of removing their waste. They rent the space from their customer, producing the product and send it straight to the assembly line. But that obviously depends on what type of products you have. But it will be a hard one to spot often, and you kind of have to look for the entire process and be a little bit creative in what you do. The value stream mapping and supply chain optimization, linear programming, and so on can help reduce this type of waste. A flavor of some of these defect areas is, for instance, as simple as walking to the printer, copier, filing cabinet, which is a sort of transport that shouldn't be needed. Another thing would be sending attachments rather than links, on-site visits instead of using remote technologies, and so on and so forth. Excess inventory problems. Inventory is considered the most evil of all the wastes. Why, you might ask? Because this waste can lead to waste in many other areas. Inventory leads to waiting if a product in inventory is not being worked on, right? That's just waiting. Can lead to defects from expiries. It's a form of overproduction and usually requires some non-value-added processing in it as well. Inventory is product that's due to some inefficiencies or uncertainties. The ideal is, of course, to have a zero inventory and have material pop up just when you need it. That's not always possible in a real world, but if you optimize your inventory, some of this could be conquered and you could have some real benefits out of this. Supply chain optimization, capacity studies, variation studies, inventory modeling, and so on can help you along this waste. Some flavors of what else could be in there is clutter in the physical and virtual organization, fragmented productivity, excess information, work waiting to be reviewed, approved, forwarded, software purchased but not deployed, and so on. Excess motion. If you can limit motion while doing a process, you can reduce the time and energy required for that process. This is quite simple waste to understand. After all, you'd rather sit on your couch, control the TV with a remote, than getting up every time to change the channel or increase the volume. The waste of motion is usually one of the harder ones to reduce significantly, and it doesn't provide as big impact as many of the other wastes. However, it's still a waste, and in obvious cases, it should be removed. And you could look at time and motion studies to reduce some of this waste. A flavor for some of these things is people looking for parts, tools, supplies, looking for files, paperwork, people going to a meeting, not having anything needed and going back and getting it, so you forgot your paper or something like that. So the unused employee knowledge. This concept was not added very long ago to the 8 wastes. Most companies now realize that the biggest assets are their employees. The employees of a company can make it or break it. So why not make the most out of them and get the best utilization out of your people? It doesn't mean working your employees to death. It means to ensure their ideas are heard, as you know that they can come up with great ideas. Encourage ideas is paramount for the success of any company these days. Some of the most successful companies today have been started by previous employees whose ideas were rejected at the place of work. This is, of course, the hardest of the 8 ways to see in an organization. So the best way to tackle the problem is just to encourage employees' creativity as much as possible without trying to measure this waste. Things like brainstorming session, idea gathering techniques, and so on can help reduce this waste. And flavors of sort of the waste is information overloads, unnecessary process, data, system complexity, complicated top-down rules, lack of guidelines or work standards, no empowerment, and maybe no knowledge base to some extent. So the waste is gone. What now? Once it's been eradicated, it is necessary that the remaining process steps are integrated to optimize the service delivery. One such an integration solution could be automating the workflow between, say, different departments and thereby minimizing the wait time. Lean IT also insists that no step should occur until triggered by a pull signal from the downstream step. So this could drastically reduce stockpiles of inventory, reduce the cycle times, and it sort of strives for perfection along the Lean IT principle. Lean IT provides almost a recipe for survival that simultaneously lay the groundwork for growth. Lean IT is so much more than just a philosophy. It encompasses all of your company. And the IT organizations can effectively maximize value and minimize cost by focusing on IT's high-impact value streams across their dimensions. There's 2 kinds of lean, or you could say it comes in 2 flavors, the quick hit and deep dig. The quick hit approach is mostly appropriate where you have processes with obvious trouble spots and doesn't have a lot of variations. The dig deep approach is appropriate for established processes where inefficiencies are suspected but maybe not so obvious, and for organizations who are established and want to expand their continuous improvements. So the introduction of Lean into a company is also known as a Lean transformation program. Because it's a big organizational and cultural change, Lean IT is not only introduction of a single methodology. A Lean transformation requires actions in many different dimensions. Some of the areas that you should consider is mindset of behavior, there is process efficiency, there is performance management, there is organization and skills, and there is the voice of the customer in all of this. For each of the dimensions, there is a number of tools, methods, and approaches you can use. And as a part of Lean transformation, you introduce different units throughout the company. The transformation of a working unit and team normally takes between 3 and 4 months, and afterwards a continuous improvement process will be set up to keep the momentum going and get further improvements. As you go through your transformation, there is on the screen, as you can see, 5 steps. The first one is to perform an initial lean assessment. And the purpose of the lean assessment is to identify organizational strengths and weaknesses and determine how lean your organization is initially in your different areas. This should actually include financial and operational analysis. And it's important to select if you're going to do it internally or externally, as there could be significant differences if you bring a consultant in versus someone internally would have more knowledge about your particular company. The second step is begin to tracking metrics. The lean assessment will provide the baseline and answer the question of where are we as a company. Tracking and posting metrics will show where you are going and what you're doing during your lean transformation. It will gauge how successful your lean implementation will be. Develop a set of metrics that you will use to track your implementation efforts all the way through. It's important that it's a relatively small number of metrics, otherwise it's hard to see the progress. And metrics shouldn't just be reserved for management, it should be transparent and available to everyone in the company. The third step is to develop a 1-year detailed plan, and then you look beyond to a 3- and 5-year plan as well. Based on the lean assessment and the metrics selected, develop a timeline for your lean implementation steps. It should include goals, milestones, and so on. The plan needs to be tailored to the unique circumstances of your organization. There is no one-fits-all here. Number 4, you also need to develop a training plan. Companies commonly make 2 mistakes in regards to lean training. They either train much too early or they fail to train at all. Both these mistakes can prove to be very, very costly when you implement lean. It's important to develop a training plan that coincides with the implementation plan. You should identify who should be trained, when they should be trained, and what disciplines they should be trained for in your lean implementation steps. Finally, you need to develop a communication and performance reward plan, communicating the plan to go lean to everyone in the organization, let them know how this will affect them, and part of that plan should include a plan how to reward both teams and individuals for their successful participation in the lean implementation steps. As your plan steps into the future, keep these in mind and use them as you go through it. So, what are the challenges when you implement lean? One is what we call value stream visualization. Unlike lean manufacturing, where you have from which all the principles derive, lean IT depends on value streams that are digital and intangible rather than physical and tangible. This could be quite difficult to visualize in the IT value streams, and hence the application of lean becomes much harder. Whereas practitioners of lean manufacturing can apply visual management systems such as Kanban cards and so on, the IT management will need different tools to see the more abstract things. There is also a lack of reference implementations with lean IT. It is, like I said in the beginning, it's an emerging area in IT management, and there has been very, very little big implementations. So this is an area where it's hard to find big success projects. Another one is resistant to change. The conclusions or recommendations of lean IT initiatives are likely to demand organizational, operational, and even behavioral change that may meet some real resistance, not only from your workers, from managers and even senior execs. And this could be driven by the fear of losing their jobs or their job being slightly more complicated and so on. For example, a lean IT recommendation to introduce flexible staffing, whereby application development and maintenance managers share personnel, is often met with resistance by individual managers who had relied on these people. And finally, fragmented IT departments is a little bit of a challenge here. Even through business services and ensuring flow of information span from multiple departments, IT is commonly structured in almost silos of operational and technologies, which makes it very hard to introduce a company-wide system, if you will. So this might be quite difficult. And this is all I had on Lean IT. You're going to get a white paper after this with covering most of these points and how you can go about doing this in your company. Anybody, any questions? Okay, I have two here. In lean manufacturing, there is a concept of just-in-time. Does this apply to lean IT? Well, it does and it doesn't. And there are areas of IT where just-in-time works really, really well, which is development, testing, consumables, and so on. If you want to look a bit more into that area, this is how lean handles flow and pull. That's where the just-in-time comes in. I also have another one. What's the adoption rate for lean IT? It is actually fairly hard to say. It is quite new, but according to Forrester, there's about 3 to 4% of organizations that adopted some form of lean IT initiatives, which you can compare to ITIL, which is about 60-odd%. Another one question we got here is if we provide any professional services to help with implementing lean IT. Is we do, and get hold of your account manager and we can sort that out. I just want to thank everyone for attending today, and I hope you got out a bit what you wanted. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick. Bye-bye.